Right now on Sports Extra, what a win for the Falcons that you just saw right here on 11 Alive on Sunday Night Football. We're breaking everything down, and we are live from Minneapolis. And look, we can't forget about college football Saturday. Two great games and ranked wins for both Georgia and Georgia Tech has the whole city buzzing.
I can't say enough about those young guys. I can't say enough about what they've done. They learn how to play football every single day. They learn how to live this NFL life every single day, and they're loving it, and they're embracing it.
We feel like our team is a certain identity, and we're not going to go down without a fight. We're nowhere near where we need to be. We're a long way from being there, but boy, we got some kids that aren't afraid to fight.
3 years of work to get to a very I'm so happy right now.
And I'm happy it's time for Sports Extra. It's a jam-packed show, and we're talking all about winners, baby, and it starts right now. Welcome into Sports Extra, everybody. I'm Reggie Chatman on an awesome weekend of college football and NFL. You guys watched some awesome games this weekend. We're excited to be able to break it all down tonight on Sports Extra. I'm very thankful for the two guys that decided to join me on a late night here in the city of Atlanta. Caleb Johnson as well as Gabe Burns, both in the building alongside me. I mean, between the Dogs, between the Jackets, and between the Falcons, all getting crazy wins. Have we had a crazier weekend in the city in a long time?
I can't remember it. We were just talking about when was the last time we were so joyful over Georgia sports without the Braves being involved.
Yeah, right.
That's the big factor.
We don't even have one Braves mention tonight. It's all about ball.
I mean, it's honestly, it feels really good. You could take it a step further into like the Georgia States, the Georgia Southerns, the Kennesaw States. Like, it's just been a good weekend all around.
Look, we got to savor these moments, man, because you never know when they could end. All right, we got to talk about the Falcons, right? Another awesome weekend for them as they get it done here in week 2. We have to start with this. Falcons, massive win as the pass rush was really the main game changer in this one. 6 sacks on the day, 5 of them in the first half, the most in a first half for this Falcons team since 2009. Incredible. That feels like it has to be the big thing we had to talk about early. What is the major difference for this pass rush, and how good is it to actually see it come to fruition like this?
Well, they've got better players.
There you
They're
go.
More talented. Obviously, Ulbricht's done a nice job. I couldn't believe it. It's been so long since we've seen a Falcons pass rush. This must have been how people felt when Jesus turned water into wine, right? I mean, it was absolutely, I couldn't believe what I was watching, how dominant they looked at times. So, look, tons of credit. This is going to be the worst O-lines they face all year. Obviously, Justin School is, he's a backup level player, but nonetheless, the standard here has been pretty low, so this has been great to see.
Jalen Walker, James Pierce Jr. both getting sacks in this game, which is great news for this defense that had spent so much draft capital to get both those guys. That's a funny way of you putting it, but just how nice is it to be able to see some pass rush and also this defense that was just so successful being able to shut down and keep the Vikings to just 6 points on the day.
Yeah, Terry Fontenot's got to be looking like I'm a pretty smart man at this point, because I was able to pull this off and go and get a draft class in which everyone impacted the ball in this game. I mean, it was crazy to see, whether it was James Pierce Jr. getting his first sack, Jalen Walker getting his first sack, and I think just for a guy like Walker, just to get his name called because he had kind of been a non-impactful player in that first game. Xavier Watts to come in later in the game, but I think everybody's swarming around. It wasn't just one guy. This isn't an Adrian Claiborne type situation where, he had all those sacks in the first half of that game years ago. Like, this was impactful from multiple different perspectives, and then it's nice when you have a competent coordinator and Jeff Ulbrich who was able to kind of round everybody together.
The defense allowed just 198 total yards of offense, turned over the Vikings 4 different times in this game, and especially important when the offense wasn't doing a whole lot to get into the end zone until the very last part of this game. Thankfully for them, Parker Romo came through, really kind of a revenge game for him, elevated for the practice squad Saturday after being signed on Tuesday. 5 for 5 on field goals, 1 for 1 on extra points. I mean, after Young Wei Koo's struggles in week 1, Caleb, how nice to be able to see a kicker go out there and even sometimes, I mean, we saw this kick. It was a little stressful. But for him to be able to be perfect on the day, how big is this for this team?
I mean, it's huge. This is what he was brought in to do. He knew when he talked to the media earlier this week, it was like, I don't get to stick around unless I'm making kicks. And shout out to the McIntosh High School product.
Come on now.
The local, Peachtree City kid who gets to kick for his hometown team and makes such an impact. And then in the same respect is learning his teammates while he's doing a national TV interview, meeting Leonard Floyd. So like just an all-around really fun day, because this could have gone in a completely different perspective. We were kind of talking earlier. If this had been Younghoe Koo in this game, I would have been extremely uncomfortable expecting Koo to make 5 kicks in that kind of consistent level, even if they were short term. This wasn't big kicks that needed to be made, but Parker Romo gets the job done, and he gets to keep his job for another week at least.
I mean, look, you got to take that. The question is what will happen with Younghoe Koo, but maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later. But we have to talk about the quarterback play. We got to talk about the offense. Michael Penix Jr. threw for just 135 yards in this game. Gabe, is that something that we should be worried about, or is that just based off of just how good this Vikings defense really is?
I think it's a combination of things. Again, he's a young player. He was always going to struggle, which is why you give so much credit to the Falcons defense today for really picking him up, because there's going to be plenty of times he picks that unit up, and we saw what he was capable of last week. Again, this is part of the deal with a young quarterback. Like, he's going to have off games. He's got plenty of weapons to work with. I'm not really worried about him. I'm not worried about the offense. The bigger takeaway to me was the defense. I would just say again, like, you just don't want, when a young player is going through the growing pains, you just don't want them to struggle the way that J.J. McCarthy did tonight, because that's when you end up, kind of killing your team. And Penix struggled tonight, but it wasn't to that degree.
Look, I mean, Brian Flores is the defensive coordinator for the Vikings. He's a guy that makes things really difficult for a lot of young quarterbacks, and for them to pull out a win at the end of the day is the biggest deal of it all. It was very clear that the run game was a major priority after struggling to run it a little bit last week. 39 rushes, 4 completions to running backs. They were just getting it to Bijan and Tyler Algier all night. Bijan Robinson at 168 yards by himself. Caleb, is this what the offense needs to look like to be successful this year, or was this just predicated based off of what was going on defensively?
Yeah, I think, look, this showed that this offensive line, who is clearly, we have a lot of questions coming into this game as to whether they were going to be able to hold up. I think the pass at times is a bit of an issue, but as far as run blocking, I think they did a really good job. Guys on the perimeter also did a great job blocking as well. You give credit to guys like Drake London. I think Bijan, and now we can call him Bijan because apparently we've had that correction again. Look, Bijan showed why he was a top pick in the draft, why Terry Fontenot wanted to go get a difference maker like that. I would love to see his hands catching the ball a little bit more consistent, but I think as far as running the ball, just night and day difference from what we saw last week against Tampa Bay.
And we've seen Bijan catch the ball well, so for him to have a couple of drops, you got to feel pretty good that he can probably figure that out. I do want to give a quick shout out before we go. Jalen Walker, our Georgia spotlight. This is why the Falcons drafted the former Bulldog. Walker picks up his first career sack tonight, hopping off the edge and getting all over J.J. McCarthy. His first sack of his NFL career, the first of what Falcons fans, and I'm sure this Falcons organization is hoping is many in his long, long career. All right, coming up, we're heading to Minneapolis to check in with Maria Martin with what the Falcons had to say in the locker room post-game. All that coming up after the commercial break. Welcome back to Sports Extra, everybody. I'm Reggie Chatman on a night where the Atlanta Falcons beat the Minnesota Vikings to get their first win of 2025. It was a game that had a whole lot of layers to it on both sides of the ball for the Dirty Birds, but a win is a win against a playoff team from a year ago. A win that Maria Martin was in the building for, good enough to join us now after talking with the Dirty Birds after the win. Maria, what was the feeling from inside that locker room after a massive win on the road?
Reggie, let me tell you, one of the first things that I had to figure out was, is it Bijan or Bijan? It's the never-ending debate, okay? I will tell you his mom, Lamore, prefers it to be Bijan, but Bijan prefers it to be Bijan. So we're going to put that to rest, but that was the first feeling in the locker room. But these guys are excited. Look, it's only week 2, but they know how big and important of a win this is. Sunday Night Football, this is as big as it gets. And remember, Minnesota was just coming off of a very good win on Monday Night Football, so working with a short week. They had their rookie quarterback, who is Offensive Player of the Week, J.J. McCarthy. He just had a baby this week. A lot of people think that there's dad power involved in that, but honestly, this Falcons defense made him look very pedestrian pedestrian at times. Now, one thing that Minnesota is very notorious for is the atmosphere. And I can tell you, I've been here for a Final Four matchup, very different when there's a basketball court in the middle of US Bank Stadium. It is unbelievable how loud it is. It is deafening, so much so that the Falcons practice it all week. They wanted to make sure silent count was there. They wanted to make sure that they could get the call in from the sideline. Bijan actually admitted that it was a little bit difficult in the beginning. Here he is on just how loud US Bank Stadium really gets.
Honestly, I'm so locked in. I don't even think twice about what's going on. It's great for them. They have a great setup. But for me, we're so focused on the game. Props to them for always bringing that energy. But I think it was just on us for us to stay focused and not get distracted by all those cool things.
It was really cool. You have an entire atmosphere full of people doing skull clapping, their hands over the head. You have the horn going. You have unbelievable deafening noise, so much so that pre-snap penalties were actually an issue for the Falcons in the beginning of this game. But once they settled into a rhythm, they were getting the calls in from the sideline at an appropriate time. Obviously, offensively, they did struggle a bit, but give the Vikings defense some credit. They did a lot of work in the offseason to really retool that interior defensive line. But we will talk all about the Falcons defense because, Reggie, they looked really good.
Yeah, I was about to say it's what everybody's going to want to talk about heading into this next week. We've been looking for a long time for a Falcons pass rush. 6 sacks on the day, 5 in the first half. What was the conversation like about that part of the defense that shined on a massive stage?
Oh man, they're so excited, Reggie, especially because 6 sacks total in the game. This is something that Falcons fans have been dreaming about for a long time. It's been the conversation ever since I brought John Abraham on the show. He is one of the best to ever wear a Falcons uniform, one of the best to ever get after a quarterback, and he's been begging for the same thing that all the Falcons fans have. And finally, all of the hard work by this front office over the last couple of years really started to show its head tonight. That doesn't mean that there's some resurgence of this pass rush all of a sudden, but 6 sacks is a very promising thing, and it also came from a lot of different guys that are very young. You have some of these young rookies in the 2025 class, including, don't forget, several of the guys in the 2024 class, Ruka Rororo and Brandon Dorless, also getting after the quarterback today. Here is James Pierce Jr. on the pass rush this evening.
Bunch of happy guys in the locker room, you feel me? Coach is happy. Pretty sure we get back in tomorrow and figure out where we went wrong at, how could we be better. But on to the next one. It's better leaving from a win than an L, for sure.
The fact that there were 6 sacks tonight, you were one of them. Mm-hmm. What does that say about this defense and what you guys are capable of?
I feel like we just played more with our hair on fire. We really wasn't holding back, you get what I'm saying? We played a little bit more freer and just rush, you get what I'm saying? Wasn't worried about nothing.
Okay, so one thing about the pass rush that makes it a little bit more promising is that we knew that it was coming, right? When you have a new defensive coordinator in Jeff Ulbrich, who's been showing you a lot of different exotics, we saw how many different things he was willing to offer to the table in the Tampa game. He did the same thing in Minnesota. And keep in mind, there were 2 very critical pieces missing for this offensive line for the Vikings. They're down their starting center, Ryan Kelly. That happened in the middle of the game. Before the game, their starting left tackle, Christian Harrisaw, didn't even play, so that did give them one-step advantage. But this is definitely where Bijan is now making all of us do some things on live television. The team is getting ready to go on the flight right now. Tyler Algier is about to walk by me. But no, it is a really good thing, and it's a promising thing when all of these rookies can get together and do great things. Tyler is happy about his game-winning or game-sealing touchdown as well. This team, very excited. Again, it's only week 2, Reggie, but this is just a sign of things to come.
I'll tell you, winning football really brings some great energy out from these guys. Michael Penix Jr. actually was behind you a little bit earlier waving as well, so you're kind of bringing everybody to our broadcast. Yeah. I do want to talk about this. James Pierce Jr., Jalen Walker both got their first sacks of the year. Xavier Watts, Billy Bowman were both very effective defensively as well. The rookies really showed out. What were the rookies talking about in their only second game action in the NFL and just how effective they really were?
Yeah, I better say the right thing because you got Terry Fontenot and Raheem Morris walking behind me right now. Look, this was a very good win for them, especially because I mentioned that they have been putting in a lot of work to get these rookies to do the right thing, right? When you draft 4 defensive rookies in 2025 and you start them immediately, talking about the secondary and Billy Bowman Jr., who was questionable heading into the game, but he did play in this game. Clearly, he got his first career interception tonight. And then Xavier Watts, he was so close in the Tampa game on 2 different occasions. Finally, he got his first NFL interception as well this evening. These rookies are showing that they are here to make some noise.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Like I said, last week I wish I would have had those two, but that's in the past. I capitalized this week, made the most of the opportunity, but I'll celebrate it for a little bit, and then it'll be over, so get ready for next week after probably tomorrow. So.
Your rookie class balled out. What can you say about the fact that you guys are adding so much depth to this team defensively?
Yeah, I mean, just got a whole bunch of dogs. Me, Billy, JP, J-Walk. Defensively, like I said, we got a whole bunch of dogs coming in. We're hungry, so we're ready to just do our thing.
Listen, there's something about me and primetime attendance for these games with the Falcons. They tend to win when I'm here. I'm just saying, maybe I'll take the credit, Reggie. But these guys, clearly, you can see the mood that they're in. They are happy because this is something very positive to build upon, especially when you already saw a very close loss to Tampa, now a big win against a good Vikings team. You're starting to see what this front office has been building over the last couple of years. This was a very big and good win in Minnesota, Reggie.
Well, look, I'll make sure that we get on X and let people know that it was all because of you that they got the win today. A very impressive win for the Falcons. Maria, thank you very much for joining us from Minneapolis. All right, coming up, it was also a huge weekend of college football. We're breaking down exciting ranked win for the Dogs and for the Jackets coming up after the commercial break.
All great game, but you know, I feel almost like you have to apologize because I don't think that we should have won that game. I thought they outplayed us in a lot of ways. But that's the way it goes. I mean, I've had one against them about 9 or 10 years ago that certainly went that way. So it comes and goes.
Kirby never forgets, right? I actually had to double check to make sure I heard Kirby Smart say that correctly post-game, but he did, and he's right. It took some late-game offensive heroics, that missed kick, and an overtime score to beat the Volunteers for the 9th straight time in a game that lived up to the hype and that incredible atmosphere at Neyland Stadium. Part of an insane sports weekend for our area teams, both the Dogs and Tech, massive winners on Saturday, but we begin in Knoxville as Sports Extra continues this evening. Gabe and Caleb still alongside me to talk some ball. A lot to unpack after a bunch of awesome games for this weekend, and people are trying to continue to unpack what is good and what's bad about Georgia's quarterback. Gunnar Stockton had a lot of questions coming into this game. It was interesting. They talked about the air yards thing, went deep the very first play. What questions were answered about Gunnar's performance on Saturday?
He's not along for the ride. Like he can win this team games. I mean, he's like the questions about throwing deep. The poise that he showed, I mean, the 4th down touchdown, I mean, particularly that, I mean, that was, you know, possibly the play of the game. I was so impressed. And in an environment that's, I mean, I know people get tired of hearing about the Neyland environment, but that is as hard as it gets. Georgia seems to be the only team that goes in there and wins. So if you're a Georgia fan, you have to be incredibly encouraged by Gunnar. Everything you saw, just how he handled himself, how the team rallied, the plays that he can make with his feet, the timely throws. I feel like there were a lot of questions answered, and in a positive way.
23 of 31, 304 yards passing, 2 touchdowns passing, also ran for a touchdown as well. Very impressive performance. And like you said, that environment was absolutely insane. Meanwhile, the defense gave up 41 points. They did look lost at times. I will say some of that just came from a lot of deep balls, and that's kind of what this defense has kind of been saying as well. How much of the defensive issues were based off of what Georgia needs to get better at? And how much was it based off of what Tennessee does, as their offense is a little bit different than a lot of other teams?
Yeah, I think you've got to give some credit to Josh Heupel and the things that he is able to draw up offensively. I mean, Joey Aguilar, the reason why they wanted to go get him and do this trade with Nico and UCLA was to get a guy who can sling the ball around. I think it's easy for fans to look at a Dalen Everett and Ellis Robinson and go, oh, you guys got burnt. But I think Kirby Smart was pretty adamant that, hey, our safeties have got to be in their right positions. Otherwise, we're not giving up some of these big plays. So, kind of tough to see defensively, but at least they held it together.
Dogs came back from 14 points, their largest comeback in a road SEC game since 2004. And as excited as that Dogs win one, you could argue the Jackets win was even crazier. Bobby Dodd, a walk-off field goal to beat Clemson. That was set up thanks to a singular conversation between head coach Brent Key and his quarterback.
Came over the sideline, and Haynes said, put the ball in my hand, we're going to win this thing. And we did. Our kids believe.
Now, one of my favorite traditions is checking X after a big Georgia Tech win. Haynes King has become a cult hero for college football fans because just how he seems to will his team to wins. Is this maybe overstating it? Is he kind of Tim Tebow-esque, Gabe? I mean, at this point, he runs the ball and just does everything.
Hey, I grew up a Florida fan. I can't go that far. But he's a Tech legend. All the credit in the world to Haynes. He's an absolute Tech legend, and he'll be remembered here forever.
Leaves his body absolutely on the line every play. I mean, he's probably in a wheelchair somewhere today wheeling around. but he's enjoying a win because he is willing to put his body on the line, get in the end zone, and help his team with a big upset.
I know we talked about Neyland Stadium. It is really an incredible, incredible place. Bobby Dodd in a big moment is just really just as good as almost anywhere else in the country. All right, coming up after the commercial break, we got to show some love to the Atlanta Dream. That and more next. All right, before we go, we got to shout out the Atlanta Dream. The Dream took out the Indiana Fever 80-68 in game 1 of the first round of the playoffs. Ryan Howard and Alicia Gray accounted for half of the Dream's 80 points. This is the Dream's first playoff win since 2018. They'll have a chance to close out the series in game 2 on Tuesday. All right, thank you guys so much for joining us, and thank you guys so much for being on the show. Another incredible week of football coming up. We'll see you guys next week on Sports Extra.